What's up guys, and welcome back to Move Plus. Hope you're all keeping well out there. Our workout today has 3 sections we're going to work through. We will start off with the warm-up, so just getting the body nice and mobilized and nice and loose. From there we'll go into the build section, which is going to be a combination of some upper body work and some midline work. Then we've got Move, which is going to have burpees, seesaw bent over rows, and single arm push presses. There'll also be some rest scattered throughout that, so that's going to be a little bit more interval style. So with the warm-up, we're going to start things off with 2 minutes of cardio of your choice. What we're going to do is alternate between 10 box jumps. It's going to look like that, and then going into 20 scissor jumps. So this one, basically like a shallow jump lunge, just switching the feet back and forth. So those 2 things will be on repeat for the first 2 minutes. The next 3 minutes, we're doing as many rounds as we can of a single dumbbell bent over row. So we're going to go both heads of the dumbbell, doing that row motion there. We then go into 8 lateral hops over the dumbbell. So we set it up in the middle, stand to one side, and we are jumping from right to left over the top. And the last one there is 3 reps on right and 3 reps on left on a single-sided deadlift. So going from ground to stand up with a nice straight back. So those 3 movements will be on repeat for the 3 minutes at the end of that warm-up. You good to go, Em? Yep. All right, starting in 10, so 2 minutes of cardio of your choice, guys. You can do the same as us, or you can do your own thing. Going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So you guys can feel free to kind of take creative license with this. If you want to just do one movement all the way through, maybe you just really like doing jumping jacks, you can do that for the full 2 minutes. We've picked two movements here because a 2 minute block obviously is a little longer than the 1 minute we normally do. So just allowing a little bit of variance through there keeps things nice and interesting. We're going to do 10 reps on the box jumps here, and key things we're going to see is a 2-footed takeoff to a nice tall stand-up, and we've deliberately picked a nice low height to go with because this is a warm-up. We don't want to jump up onto anything hugely high, so something that we can just roll into even if we've been sitting still and not doing too much beforehand. Now the scissor jumps, as I said before, it's kind of like a shallow jump lunge. So the stance is going to be kind of shorter, okay, or the foot position is going to be shorter, and it's just a nice quick rebound back and forth. So this is going to be good, especially if you're getting the legs nice and warmed up, getting the ankles warmed up, that sort of thing. You can always feel free to kind of mix different stuff in along the way. So past the minute marker. Remember, when we get to the end of this 2 minute block, guys, we've got that 3 minute section straight after, which is going to be 10 bent over rows, 8 lateral hops over the dumbbell, and then 3 reps on right and left on that single-sided deadlift. So nice upright body position. The feet are just staying kind of on the balls of the feet, so not really any heel contact there. The arms are just going to kind of go opposite motion, so similar to like when we run, that sort of thing. Always a good idea if you're doing any kind of box jumping motion to try and get your feet fully on the box. That way you're not going to risk sort of losing balance. If you're landing just the balls of the feet, you can kind of hit the edge and sort of stumble backwards. So we want to make sure we get a good grounding on that landing position. Okay, 3, 2, 1. So we're going straight into the 10 bent over rows. So grabbing either head of the dumbbell, we're going from an extended arm position. So we're going to be down around kind of knee height at the bottom there. You can kind of use that as a marker, and then drawing it up to sort of abdomen or even belly button height there, squeezing the shoulder blades back together. From there we move into the 8 lateral hops over the dumbbell. So good idea, like Emma's doing, she's kind of keeping her eyes cast down. She knows where that target is, so she's not going to end up sort of jumping the wrong way and landing on top of it. With the deadlift here, we're looking for a nice straight back. That's the most important part. Tag the ground if you have the mobility to. If you feel like it's a little bit far out of reach and you're going to get kind of twisted out of position, just move down to sort of halfway down the shin. That's fine. We want to make sure that spine is a nice straight setup when we do those reps. You'll notice the position's almost identical here when we're in that bent over row. So again, she's hinging at the hips, making sure she's not rounding off. Now, one of the things we need to always be cautious of when we're doing any kind of single-sided movement is that we're trying to keep everything nice and square, nice and even. So I always like to think if I've got the dumbbell in my right hand, I'll pretend there's one in the left hand. so that my shoulders and my hips kind of move at the same path rather than one side reaching and kind of twisting my body into a weird shape. So we've got about 90 seconds left. Em's doing kind of like a rebounding jump here. You can, if you're sort of maybe a little newer to this, not so confident with it, you can jump and just stop and then reset yourself, jump and stop. Do it a little bit slower if you're a little bit sort of need to be a bit more cautious with it. That's cool. I like that Em's going a nice narrow stance on this. It means that dumbbell can just go straight down. If we're too wide with that setup, you're going to feel like you're having to reach that dumbbell outwards. Again, we can see the similarities with this bent over row position. The legs are narrow again, same as the deadlift. Okay, I've got about 20 seconds left. Okay, last 10 seconds. And time. All right, guys, so that is the warm-up done. Have a little bit of recovery time, and then we're gonna check out build next. Alrighty, so we're having a look at the build workout now, guys. This one is 12 minutes, and it's an alternating EMOM. So we're gonna kind of have like 4 stations we're gonna rotate through. The first one has got 2 components to it. So we're gonna be doing 25 seconds of a single dumbbell strict press. That's pressing from shoulders up to overhead. And then that moves into 25 seconds of an overhead hold. So she'll just lock out and hang out there. From there, we move into minute 2, which is gonna be 50 seconds of hollow flutter kicks. So she sets up on that low back, legs straight, and just kicking back and forth. Okay, from there we go to minute 3, which is gonna, again, have 2 components to it, and this is more of a right and left kind of a deal. So 25 seconds on a renegade row, so down to the, down the ground. So you're gonna go wide with the stance into like a push-up position. So she'll do 25 seconds on rows just on the one side, then she'll switch to the other side, do 25 seconds there as well. Okay. And then the final round, we've got 50 seconds of dead bugs. So we're gonna take ourselves onto our back again, set up that nice neutral spine, and then from there we're going opposite arms and legs, extending out. Okay, so those 4 stations will be on repeat for 12 minutes, so essentially 3 cycles through. Em, you good to go? Yep. Starting in 10, so we've got our strict press and overhead hold for minute 1. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So the key thing with the strict press, guys, is making sure that there's no dipping and driving with the legs or no jerking kind of motions or anything like that. It's always really tempting, especially when the shoulders get tired, to start using some momentum and some effort from the lower body. We want to train everything to lock in place. So abs are tight, glutes are tight, legs are locked straight, and then it's just arms and shoulders doing all the work there. And holding overhead. Okay, so this is that secondary move now, guys. We lock out at the overhead. Everything, again, is nice and controlled, nice and locked in. Make sure that we're not leaning back or having that dumbbell out in front of ourselves. We want it stacked over the body. So 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and resting. So 10-second rest, guys. This is going to be kind of the same fashion for each of these rounds. There's always the last 10 seconds is a bit of recovery time. Ready, and go for it. So hollow flutter kicks now, 50 seconds on. This one's pretty deceiving, guys. It is harder than it looks, and it will get real spicy real quick. So if you do have to drop for a moment, that's totally fine, but just kick straight back up as soon as you can. Fill up that 50 seconds with as much work as possible. So we want to see legs straight, toes pointed, and you'll notice here that the pivot is from the hip rather than the knee. It's not a bicycling kind of a motion. It's just from the hips there. So we've got 20 more seconds. So quick little rest, and then we're straight back in. We always want to have those shoulders off the ground whilst we're moving through them. You can see Em's head and shoulders kind of picked up there. She's pulling the ribs down into the belly. Good, 5 more seconds. and resting. All right, so moving to the renegade rows now. So this is where we set up in that push-up position with the feet wide. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So we're kind of creating a little bit of like a tripod position with the front end being the hand in the middle, the feet at the back splaying out wide to make that triangle shape. And the other one is doing the rows with the dumbbell. Now, sometimes with the renegade row, depending on which version you're doing, there's a push-up involved. We're not doing that one today. We're just doing purely the arm movement. I'm showing a nice scaled version there. Switch sides. Just scaling it onto the knees, which you can definitely do if you feel like on the toes is too difficult. So a lot of this is sort of upper body pulling strength, but a lot of it is also going to be bracing through the midsection and through the hips, trying to stop the body from wanting to tip over every time you lift that dumbbell. And resting. All right, we've got dead bugs for the last one. Ready, and go for it. Okay, so key thing with this one, guys, is we're thinking about the connection between our upper torso, so think like rib cage, shoulders, everything up top, and then our pelvis. We want to brace through the midsection so that bridge through the middle is nice and solid. What we don't want to feel like is, as we're extending those limbs out, the rib cage and the pelvis are trying to roll away from one another. We want them to stay nice and connected so the arms and the legs can kind of move independent of the torso, rather than dragging them with them. 15 more seconds. So you can see she's reaching nice and long, elbows and knees fully locked out at the end, and resting. All right, so that's one full cycle down, guys. I'm gonna move into the next one in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So back on the strict press. Really looking for the dumbbell, the elbows, the shoulders, the hips, the knees, the ankles, everything to get in one straight line. So we're going to really reach up into it, create a nice stacked position at the top. And holding. And the temptation here, guys, will be to hold your breath because it's easier to brace that way, but we do want to just keep that oxygen coming in. So little short, sharp breaths, still maintain the tension in the belly. 10 seconds. And resting. Okay, so we're under the hollow flutter kicks. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So along the way with this one, guys, if you ever feel like your low back is starting to kind of arch away from the ground, it's building up a lot of pressure there, you feel like your shoulders are kind of on the ground, but the low back isn't, just rest for a moment and then re-engage it once you've recovered a little bit. We want to make sure that we're keeping that nice hollow position. So we can see that as it gets to kind of M's upper back, starts to curve up off the ground. We don't want that curve to be the other way around with the low back reaching up off the floor. 10 more seconds. Three, 2, 1, and resting. So going to the renegade rows next. And go for it. Okay, so again, this is that full version, guys. We're right up on the toes, so this is the harder version we're doing. Notice that Em's trying to get her elbow right back past the line of her body, so it's a nice deep pull. I always like to imagine like almost like you're pulling a bow and arrow. It's that kind of depth of where we're retracting the shoulder blade, bringing it right up outside the edge of the rib cage there, and switching. Go for it. So along with getting that nice smooth pulling motion, we're trying to work hard keeping the hips in a nice straight line and not allowing them to pitch up in the air or sort of wobble from side to side. 3, 2, 1, and resting. So moving back onto the dead bugs. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So nice and slow and smooth on this one, guys. You don't want to rush it. It's better done with a lot more control. It's about building stability through that midsection there. So it's not one to just be running the arms and the legs back and forth. You want to keep it nice and smooth. 20 seconds. Five seconds. And resting. All right, so that's 2 full cycles down. We've got 1 more to go. So we're going to swing back around to those strict presses. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So obviously this is getting towards the tail end of this part of the workout, guys. So that fatigue's going to be starting to creep in. Make sure we check in again that the lower body is locked in place. Quads, glutes, abs, everything's braced. And then we're reaching into that nice tall position. Notice how Em's head, or at least her face, kind of comes forward of the line of her arms. That way we know she's not kind of hanging out the back here and getting into bad position. Yep, go to the hold. Now don't underestimate this hold, guys. This can be more challenging than it appears. So holding there with a dumbbell, it's a narrower position. If you've ever done this with the barbell, you can get out to a nice, comfortable, wide position. Dumbbells are a lot more narrow, so it's going to take some more mobility. Em's doing a good job. And resting. All right, moving along to the flutters next. And go for it. So with the flutter kicks, guys, the movement doesn't have to be big either. If you find yourself doing these giant, big paddling kicks like this, just bring it in small, and it's literally just the point that the feet pass each other. That's big enough. You can see she's kind of operating within about a foot, foot and a half worth of space there. Just keeping it nice and close, nice and fast as well. This is one of those movements you can up the speed a little bit, get some serious volume in. You can still see she's got that nice hollow at the upper body there. So she's really just resting on kind of the top of her butt and her low back. 3, 2, 1, and resting. So moving on to the Renegade rows one last time. Ready, and go for it. Doing a good job, Em. Okay, so we're seeing that scale version again. Just dropping it back a little bit. We'll switch sides. If that allows you to move more smoothly through this, guys, and not get held up too much, maybe get a little bit more volume in, feel free to scale it, that's okay. Also, if it allows for better form, if you're doing the full version, it feels like it's getting a bit rickety, scale it down, execute it better. And resting. Okay, so coming into the last minute now for this build workout. We've got the dead bugs one last time. And go for it. So you want to recheck in that we're connecting upper and lower torso, locking in, bracing through there. Keep that control as those limbs get further and further out from the body. Make sure we're not changing angles through here, or arching and flexing, that sort of stuff. "15 seconds, Em, almost there. And time. Alrighty, so that is the build workout done, guys. Take some recovery time, get some water in, and we're gonna have a look at move next. Alrighty guys, we're gonna have a look at the move workout now. So this one is gonna be 3 rounds, 4 reps of the following. So minute 1, we're gonna go with burpees. So coming down chest to ground, popping up, and then a jump and a clap at the top. A minute of that then rolls into a minute of dumbbell seesaw bent over rows. So we're gonna get our 2 dumbbells, go to a bent over position and alternating arms, right? So it's going back and forth. That then rolls into minute 3, which is going to be 30 seconds of a single arm push press on the right, and then 30 seconds of a single arm push press on the left. Okay, and then the 4th minute is going to be a rest round. So keeping that in mind, when we're on those first 3 working rounds, try to work the entire minute, fill it up with as much work as possible, and then save your rest, save your breather for when you have that 4th minute, that rest round. So we're going to be doing 3 rounds through this for reps. You good to go? Starting in 10. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So on to burpees first up, guys. So pretty nice simple movement. It's one that you can get into it like a good steady rhythm with. A minute is obviously enough time to get quite a few outs. We want to try not to blow ourselves up in the first 20 seconds. So it's about finding a nice sort of strong pace, but not a sprint pace. So at the bottom, we want to see everything fully flat to the ground, chest included. Sometimes when we see people do these and they're going a little too fast, they kind of shortcut it and leave that chest off the ground. We should have flattened right down like Em's doing, completely flat to the floor. As we pop up, we get to the top there, we want open hips and a hand contact or a clap either above or behind the head. So we've got a nice vertical finish position as we jump off the ground. Again, we don't want to be moving so fast that we lose that and have the hips kind of pitched back a bit and we're leaning over still. We want to get that nice full movement. All right, 3, 2, 1, and go into the seesaw rows. So setting up with this one, guys, we're going to go narrow stance. So it basically is like a deadlift position, possibly not as deep as we normally would be. We're only going to be around knee height, but it's a similar kind of position with the stance, the vertical shins, the nice flat back. Okay, and then from there we are going right to left with the rows. Okay, so drawing the shoulder blade whilst the other arm stays out. We go from that sort of knee level or just slightly lower than knee level right up until the knuckles are just outside the rib cage. So this will be a good test of sort of rear chain strength, upper back strength, but also midline stability. Obviously we've got things going back and forth and we're trying to keep everything nice and centered. 10 more seconds. And switching onto the single arm push press on the right. So stance can stay narrow, guys. We go from that bent over row to the push press. It's going to stay feet nice and close. We'll see a nice aggressive kind of dip drive, almost a bouncing sort of sensation there. And then we're using that momentum to hoist the dumbbell up. So we're going to go 10 more seconds before we switch. 3, 2, 1. So switching to left now, another 30 seconds. So this is a very similar movement to what we did in build with the strict press. And the difference now is we get to utilize the power and the strength of the lower body. So that little dip drive, it's only a couple of inches down and then exploding back up again. That gets the dumbbell to move and then the arm just kind of finishes it off, hitting that lockout position. And resting. All right. So our 4th minute is our rest round, guys. Have a bit of a chill, get some water in, have a little bit of a move around, and then we're going to look at getting back into the burpees in a moment. Okay, 30 more seconds. 10 seconds. We'll get ready for the burpees again. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. An interesting thing to take note of here, guys, is Em's working with a slightly wider stance. We're looking at kind of shoulder width, possibly even wider than shoulder width, and all that does is allows her to hip hinge really well, right? Makes it more comfortable, more easy to get through that position through the middle. So even at the back, the feet are going to stay wide, and that's okay. But it's the main part is when she steps back in here, that position where she kind of jumps the hips up off the ground, it's just going to make for an easier position to work with, rather than going narrow and having to kind of tuck into a ball and bring the knees and the shins through in between the arms. 15 more seconds, Em. Three, 2, 1, and switching to the bent over row. Now, along the way with this one, guys, if you do start getting fatigued, you start to find, especially because of that back and forth motion, that your back position starts to get shimmied into a less than ideal position, just take a moment to stand back up again, catch your breath, and then re-engage back down with a nice flat back. It is just not worth trying to continue on if everything's sort of bent out of shape. So as Em's doing there, she's just taking a moment, catch a breath, and then back in again. So even though the body is leaned over, her chest is still kind of wound up to the front there, keeping a nice extended thoracic. Getting that nice deep pull as well, so she's coming right up outside the rib cage. Three, 2, 1, and going on to push press. So kind of similar to when we did the seesaw row, guys. We talked about it being, there's a stability factor with this. That one kind of went back and forth. This one's now a single-sided drill. So we want to make sure that we're keeping shoulders square, hips square, that sort of thing. We're not sort of slouching that dumbbell or overreaching through it. Just keeping everything nice and level. And again, that's going to add to the movement, that whole sort of factor of bracing and keeping everything nice and stable. Doing good, Em. Keep working through. You got it. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and resting. All right, so we've got one more cycle to go through. So on your rest, have a think about the 3 movements we've been doing. Think about your technique. Is there anything that you need to kind of fine tune with it? Anything you need to change? Are the weights appropriate? Get yourself reloaded for that next round. .30 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds. This is going to be our final cycle through. We've got burpees up first. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So moving through this, guys, hopefully you've been keeping count of your reps along the way so you can stay nice and consistent. Always a good challenge if you're hitting the last round like we are now to see if you can get an extra rep or two, push the tempo a little bit for the home stretch. We obviously don't want to push it so much that it affects the other 2 movements we've still got coming, but if you can get a little bit more, get a couple of bonus reps, that's always good. See, Em's got that nice pace, just cranked it up that little bit. But still hitting those important markers, so she's still getting fully flat to the ground, still popping the hips up nice and high with that wide stance, and then she's still got the open hips when she hits the jump and clap at the top. And you don't have to jump really high, guys. It's more important to be open through the hips than it is to actually jump a long way off the ground. 3, 2, 1, and switching to the seesaw row. Good. So she's still maintaining that nice neutral spine. She's not allowing the fatigue to shift her into a bad spot. Keep a nice even tempo. But as I said, like the burpees, if you're able to get a few extra reps out, that's always good. 20 more seconds. Last few reps. 3, 2, 1, and go to push press. So really want to think about the sequencing of this motion, guys. If you can get legs and hips to do all the driving first, then it's a big shrug, and then the arm finishes off last. So even though this, from all appearances, looks like a very upper body dominant movement, there is actually a lot of involvement for the rest of the body as well, especially if you're doing it really well. 3, 2, 1, switching across. Last little bit to finish off. You'll notice that when she does the dip drive, as she comes down, the heels are going to stay on the ground. As she drives up, they're going to still stay on the ground, but right at the peak of it, they're going to kind of pop up on the toes a little bit. It's almost like a little bit of a calf raise, and that's her really heaving that dumbbell and using the power from the lower body. 3, 2, 1, and done. Nice work, Em. Alrighty, guys, so that is the move workout done. Catch your breath, and then we're gonna have a look at cooling down with some stretches. Alrighty, guys, so now that all the work is done, we're just gonna slow things down, cool the body down with a little bit of mobility to finish off. So the first drill we're gonna go through is just an up dog position. So real nice basic one. We're gonna do this for the next minute. So setting up flat on the ground to start and just gently pressing up into this nice kind of upward curve. You can let the legs kind of be splayed out or together or wherever is comfortable for you. You can see Em's also adding in a little bit of light rotation just back and forth. So this is going to be really nice to get into your abs all the way sort of down the middle and around the sides there. You might even get a little bit down through the hip flexors as well if you're a bit tight there. But just keeping it up nice and tall. Now, one of the things you can do if you're in this stretch and you're like, oh, it's a little bit tight on my low back, it's a little bit too intensive, you can actually drop to forearms. So if you're gonna come down into, like that position. This is just a sort of a slightly reduced version of the same position, guys. And again, you can do a little bit of kind of right to left with the shoulders, just to kind of open it up a bit, but we're thinking about staying tall through the head, lifting that rib cage up. Nice big belly breaths in as well to try and expand that abdomen. All right, so that's drill number 1. Second one we're gonna do is a Samson stretch. So we'll go for 45 seconds on right and left here. So we take a lunge, okay? We then go arms up overhead and we're gonna reach to the side that the leg is forward. So she's got left leg forward, she's gonna go to the left. So we're sitting that stretch right down through that right side. And if she wants to and if she can, she's gonna kind of just fade the hips forward just a little bit. And she can even go kind of back and forth a little bit and sort of floss through those hips as she needs to. Okay, switching sides. Now, obviously, we're just showing you kind of one round of this, guys. Hopefully, you've got the time to do this for at least a few rounds or do the stretch for an extended period of time. That being said, we want to make sure that it's a good idea to have some cushioning under the knee. If you're going to hang out in this stretch for a couple of minutes at a time or do a few rounds of this, make it easy on yourself. Roll up a towel, put a gym mat down, whatever it is, but put some cushioning under that knee so that you're not thinking about, oh man, this is just uncomfortable on my kneecap. You want to be able to relax into the stretch and open things up. And done. Alrighty, so those are your 2 drills, guys. Let's see a couple of rounds of that. Spend some time loosening the body up. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time, and that's been your MOV+ workout.